You ever have one of those moments where time just stops? Yeah, that's what it felt like when I opened that old Bible and a note slipped out, face down on the floor like it had been waiting for me all those years. I picked it up, flipped it over, and my whole world froze. If she discovers the truth, kill her. 7 words. 7 little words that turned the loyal wife I used to be into the woman who learned how to survive. Hey there, sweetheart. I'm Gertrude Miller, 78 years old now, sitting out here in the California sun with a warm cup of coffee. And this is the story I've kept locked in my heart for almost 50 years. So picture it. 1969. The world's on fire. Vietnam, civil rights marches, protests everywhere. But in our little corner of Virginia, time felt stuck. People mowed their lawns on Saturdays, church bells rang on Sundays, and gossip was the town's favorite sport. I was 29, 10 years married to Anthony Miller, small town royalty, worked as the head accountant at the only bank in town, always buttoned up, perfect posture, crisp suit, the kind of man folks trusted with their money and their secrets. We lived in a cozy white house on a tree-lined street, with my dahlia garden out front and a squeaky porch swing that the kids loved. Michael, 8 years old, sharp as a tack, and nose always buried in a book. Teresa, 6, my little daydreamer who painted flowers on the walls when I wasn't looking. I was what folks called the perfect wife. Up before dawn, baking bread, packing lunches, ironing shirts. Anthony would sit at the kitchen table reading the paper while the smell of coffee filled the air. When the door closed behind them, the house went quiet. Too quiet sometimes. That's when I'd pull out my sewing machine. My mama taught me how to stitch when I was little. She always said, "A woman's got to keep a craft in her hands just in case life stops being kind." Didn't realize back then that advice was going to save me one day. From the outside, we looked like the picture-perfect family. Sunday picnics, polite smiles, matching church outfits. But when the curtains closed, there were cracks. Anthony wasn't cruel, not at first, just cold. There were those long silences, the kind that filled the room like fog. Business trips that didn't make sense, perfume that wasn't mine, and a feeling deep in my gut that something was very, very wrong. He always left on the first Thursday of every month, said it was bank business. And I wanted to believe him. Lord, I did. But one night when I asked where exactly he went, he looked at me with eyes I didn't recognize and said, "You've got a roof over your head and food on your table. You don't need to know more than that." That's when the silence between us turned into a wall, and I didn't know it then. But that wall was about to crumble, starting with that Bible and the note that told me someone wanted me dead. You ever have a day that just cracks open your whole life? Yeah, for me, that day was Sunday, August 17th, 1969. Mama's birthday. God rest her soul. I remember it clear as daylight, because that's the day everything changed. The kids were over at my mother-in-law Amelia's place, having Sunday lunch like usual. Anthony had left early, saying he needed to finish some bank paperwork before a big transfer the following week. Sounded normal enough. Except that morning, the house felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath. I'd been fighting the worst migraine of my life, one of those that makes your vision sparkle and your head feel like it's being split open. I tried lying down, tried pressing a cold cloth to my forehead. Nothing worked. And I remembered Anthony kept some strong painkillers in his office, stuff he brought back from New York, the kind you couldn't get in our little Virginia town. But see, his office was off limits. "No one goes in there," he'd always say. "A man needs his space to think." And back then, I was the kind of wife who followed rules, even the unspoken ones. That door had stayed closed for 10 years, but pain doesn't care about rules. So yeah, I went in. The air hit me first, thick with cigar smoke, old paper, and that expensive cologne he only wore on business trips. Dark wood desk, leather chair, shelves full of books that looked untouched, more for show than for reading, It didn't feel like a home office. It felt like a secret. I opened the top drawer, looking for that little orange pill bottle. Papers, pens, cufflinks, receipts, no medicine. My head was pounding, my eyes swimming. I reached out to steady myself against the bookshelf, and that's when it happened. The Bible fell. It hit the floor with a heavy thud, opening right in the middle. From between the yellowed pages, a small folded note slipped out and landed at my feet. Anthony's family heirloom, the Bible he always bragged about but never read. My first thought, put it back, pretend I'd never seen it. But my hands, trembling like leaves, picked up the note anyway. The handwriting stopped me cold. Edwards, Anthony's best friend, the bank manager, the guy who sent Christmas cards with terrible jokes every year. I recognized it instantly, and the words written on that note, they froze my heart. If she discovers the truth, kill her. 7 words, no explanation, no signature, just that. I read it again, hoping I'd misunderstood, but no. The message was clear, and it was meant for him, and maybe for me. I stood there, Bible still open on the floor, note shaking in my hand. The house was silent. My heart wasn't. In that moment, the woman I'd been, quiet, obedient, blind, and each side, she disappeared. Something else took her place. Something stronger. I folded the note, slid it into my apron pocket, and left the office like nothing happened. But inside, I was screaming. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a countdown. Every shadow looked like a threat. And when Anthony came home that night, smiling like always, I knew I'd never look at him the same way again. That was the night I stopped being the perfect wife and started being the woman who knew too much. Stay with me, because in the next part, you'll find out what happened when someone knocked on my door the very next morning. That knock changed everything. Ever had one of those moments where the whole world just stops? Like your brain hits pause, your body forgets how to move, and all you can hear is your heartbeat pounding in your ears? Yeah, that was me. When I read those words, if she discovers the truth, kill her, my blood didn't just run cold, it froze solid. My headache vanished, replaced by this strange, hollow numbness. My legs went weak, and I dropped right into Anthony's big leather chair before I hit the floor. My hands were shaking so bad that little note almost slipped away. Who the hell was she? Was it me? And what truth could possibly be worth killing over? A million thoughts exploded in my head all at once, but I knew one thing for sure. I had to play it smart. I folded that paper back up, slid it into the same spot between the pages of Proverbs, and placed that damn Bible exactly where it had been. No trace, no hint, no mistake. I found the painkillers, popped one with a glass of water, and laid down on the couch like nothing happened. But inside, prayed, I was burning. My whole world had tilted, and I couldn't even scream. By the time Anthony and the kids came home that afternoon, I already had a plan. Not the full one, just the seed of it. I wasn't going to confront him. No way in hell. If that note meant what I thought it did, one wrong word could end me. So I'd smile, nod, cook dinner, and quietly figure out what my husband was hiding. That night, I played my role like a pro. Dinner on the table, kids laughing, Anthony talking about boring bank stuff. On the outside, I was calm. Inside, I was screaming. Days passed, and I became an actress in my own damn life. Same old routine, breakfast ready, house spotless, dinner at 6 sharp, but now my eyes saw everything. How he locked his desk drawer every time he left, how he'd lower his voice when the phone rang, how he'd shuffle papers the moment I walked in. Those little things I used to ignore, they screamed betrayal. Then one afternoon I found it. I was ironing his shirts when a crumpled receipt fell from his suit pocket. Jewelry store Richmond. The price? Astronomical. And the item? A diamond engagement ring. I just stood there holding that slip of paper, feeling the air leave my lungs. Anthony never bought me fancy jewelry. Hell, my wedding ring was plain gold. So who was the ring for? In the same pocket, a small card with an address. Richmond again. I memorized it, tucked everything back, and smiled like nothing happened. But inside, a storm was brewing. The next week, I found my excuse. Need special fabric for my sewing, I told him. Maybe visit my cousin in Richmond. And when I got there, I found the house. Big, classy, way above our pay grade. I asked a lady watering her garden next door, casual-like. She smiled and said, "Oh, that's Marianne's house," the young teacher. Sweet girl, she's expecting a baby soon. Her fiancé visits every Thursday. Anthony's business trip day. Her fiancé from another city. Her ex-wife causing problems. That ex-wife was me. I swear I felt my heart crack in two, but tears wouldn't help. I needed the truth, the whole ugly truth. So I played the game. I gathered crumbs, little bits of info from the bank's new secretary, Mrs. Irasima. Sweet lady, talked too much at church. She mentioned this big transfer at the end of the month. Anthony and Edward, his best buddy, were in charge of it. And just like that, it clicked. The note, the ring, the house, the woman. It was all connected. Anthony and Edward were planning to steal the money. $500,000. And then run off to Argentina with Marianne and the baby? And me? I wasn't even supposed to survive long enough to see them go. One night, I found that strange key I'd seen months ago, the one he said belonged to some old file cabinet. My gut told me it was more. So while he was at work, I searched the house high and low until I found a small metal box behind the luggage in our closet. Inside were tickets to Argentina, Mr. and Mrs. Anthony Miller, fake IDs, a stack of letters from Marianne, all gushy and sweet, calling him my love, talking about their baby, their new life. And then one line stopped my heart. As Edward always says, if she finds out the truth before time, you know what needs to be done. That was it. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. They really planned to kill me. I sat there on the floor, surrounded by lies and betrayal, and made a promise. I wasn't going to be a victim. Not me. I locked the box, put everything back like nothing happened, and hid that key again. From that moment, it was war. 2 weeks. That's all I had until their big heist, and I'd use every damn second to flip the game. That night, I smiled across the dinner table at the man who'd planned my death, and he smiled back, clueless. Sometimes I wonder, if I hadn't walked into that office that day, if the Bible hadn't fallen, if that note hadn't slipped free, would I still be alive today? Guess fate has a dark sense of humor, huh? You ever had your whole world flipped upside down overnight? Like 1 minute you're just living your life, and the next the whole damn town's whispering your name like it's the latest scandal on TV. That was me. Sunday morning, coffee in hand, and suddenly I was the wife of that guy. The news about Anthony and Edward's arrest spread faster than wildfire in a dry California summer. Our little town had never seen that kind of drama before. The bank shut down for 3 days, cops from the Capitol took over, and reporters swarmed the place like vultures. They called it the Bible heist because of the note they found tucked between those old holy pages. Cute name, right? And me? Overnight, I went from Mrs. Miller to the poor wife of a criminal. People stared like I was a walking headline. Some gave me that pity look, others the I knew something was off kind of smirk. Everywhere I went, it was the same silent question hanging in the air. How could she not have known? I woke up that first morning after it all broke at Lucinda's house. The kids were still out cold, probably from all the chaos. I peeked through the curtain and saw neighbors outside gossiping, pointing at the house like they were watching some live soap opera. The rumors had already leaked. Marianne, the pregnancy, the plane tickets to Argentina, classic small-town chatter. Nothing stays buried for long. Lucinda handed me a cup of coffee and said, "Girl, don't even go out there. Stay put till things cool off," but I wasn't going to hide. That's how you feed gossip, by disappearing. So I put on one of my best dresses. the navy blue one I'd sewn myself, did my hair, added a touch of lipstick, and grabbed my purse. Lucinda looked at me like I'd lost my damn mind. "You're going to the market? Now?" "Yeah," I said, calm but firm. "If I hide, they'll think I'm guilty too." Walking to that market felt like walking across a minefield. Every step I could feel the stares. Conversation stopped when I got close. Even the butcher went quiet. Then sweet old Mrs. Zulmira broke the silence. "Mrs. Miller, you're brave. Need anything for the kids?" I smiled, thanked her, bought what I needed, and walked out with my head held high, even though inside I was shaking like a leaf in the wind. But that moment, that quiet defiance, it gave me strength for what came next. A few days later, I got word I had to go to the Capitol to give a statement. My stomach dropped. Facing Anthony again, officially, terrified me, but there was no way around it. Sheriff Valenti said, "You'll be back by night. The kids'll be fine." So 3 days after the arrest, I boarded that 5 a.m. bus wearing a gray outfit I'd tailored the night before. I carried just a few things, some photos of the kids, my mother's handkerchief, and a few crumpled bills. I didn't know what waited for me on the other side. At the police station, 3 men waited. Inspector Mendez, a prosecutor, and a clerk. They offered me coffee, which I accepted just so my hands had something to do. Mendez started, "Mrs. Miller, you're not accused of anything. We just need to understand the scheme. Your husband and Edward diverted money for at least 3 years," I nodded, barely holding it together. "Did you know about this?" asked the prosecutor. "No, sir," I said, steady as I could. "I told them about the Bible note, the affair, the lies, everything. What I didn't tell them was that I had sent the evidence anonymously. That secret stayed with me." 4 hours later, it was done. They told me we'd probably lose the house. Anthony was facing years behind bars. Then I asked, almost in a whisper, "And her?" They exchanged looks. "Marianne denies knowing about the scheme. She says she thought the relationship was real. She's 7 months pregnant and won't be charged unless evidence comes up." Something in me broke, but not from jealousy. Maybe pity, maybe understanding, maybe both. Before I left, Mendez pulled me aside. "We got an anonymous tip 2 weeks ago. Documents, photos, the whole deal. It was you, wasn't it?" I didn't answer. He smiled anyway. "Whoever it was saved a lot of people from getting hurt. You've got guts, Mrs. Miller." He handed me his card. "If you ever need help, call me." That bus ride home felt like crossing into a whole new life. I made myself a promise right then. My kids would never pay for their father's sins. Days later, I got the eviction notice. 30 days to get out. I had to tell the kids their dad had done something bad and wouldn't be home for a long time. Teresa cried, asking if he still loved us. I told her, "What he did doesn't change his love for you." "But love doesn't erase mistakes, baby." People in town reacted how small towns do. Some turned cold, others stepped up. Lucinda, Mrs. Eulalia, and my friend Louise helped me pack, offering food, clothes, anything. Louise said we could stay in the small room behind her studio in the Capitol, and then came a letter from Marianne. Perfumed paper, perfect handwriting. She said she was sorry that she never knew about the crimes, that he told her our marriage was long over. She was carrying his child, scared, lost. She didn't ask for forgiveness, just understanding. I didn't reply, but her words stuck with me, buried deep. When moving day came, I dressed the kids in their best, loaded what little we had into a taxi, and took one last look at that house. No sadness, just relief. Those walls had seen enough lies. Louise met us at the station with that big smile that could light up a whole room. "Welcome to your new life," she said. Our new home was tiny, but it was ours or close enough. That night, after the kids finally drifted off to sleep, I sat on the porch and looked up. The city's sky didn't have stars, just lights and noise, but beneath all that chaos, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Peace. That was the night I swore I'd rise from the ashes. I wouldn't just be the wife of the thief. I'd be Gertrude Miller, mother, fighter, and survivor. Don't you dare blink now, because what happens next? That's when everything changes. For real. You ever start from scratch so hard it feels like the universe hit reset on your whole damn life? Yeah, that was me. Rock bottom wasn't just a stop, it was home for a while. Those first few months in the city, brutal. I worked at Louise's studio during the day, stitching hems and fixing other people's clothes. At night, after tucking the kids in, I'd pull out scraps of fabric and sketch my own designs, dreaming of the day someone would actually wear my creations. Michael and Teresa started at the local public school. It was a whole new world for them. No uniforms, no fancy lunches, just real life. Every dollar was stretched till it screamed. Some nights I'd cry quietly after they fell asleep, part exhaustion, part fear, part heartbreak. But when morning came, I'd wash my face, put on my red lipstick like armor, and get back out there. Anthony's sentence came down. 8 years. Edward got even longer. When the newspaper printed the story, I showed it to the kids, not to shame their dad, but to teach them something real. Actions have consequences. Choices shape your story. Michael looked up at me and asked, "Can we see him?" "Whenever you're ready," I told him. "He's still your dad." That part doesn't change. That first visit to the prison hit hard. Seeing Anthony in that pale uniform, thinner, older, eyes sunken, it was like staring at a ghost of the man I once loved. Michael just sat there quiet, studying him, trying to make sense of it all. Anthony tried to explain, said he never meant to hurt us, said the plan got out of hand. I just looked at him. Some lies are so worn out they don't even deserve words. But life, somehow, kept moving forward. The city started to feel less foreign, more like possibility. Louise became more than a boss. She became my mentor. She connected me with her clients, showed me how to price my work and how to believe in it. After 6 months, I had my own little list of loyal customers, women who appreciated every stitch I made, every tiny detail I obsessed over. With what I'd saved and a little loan from sweet Mrs. Eulalia, I rented us a small apartment near the kids' school, 2 bedrooms, a cramped living room, a kitchen barely big enough for 3, but it was ours. We filled it with secondhand furniture, the smell of homemade soup, and laughter that made the walls feel warmer. I sewed bright curtains for the windows. Michael painted his and Teresa's room sky blue. That place wasn't much, but it was home. And at night when the city quieted down, I'd sit by the window with my sewing machine humming soft in the background and think about everything that had led me there. That Bible note had torn my life apart, but it also cracked something open in me. The scared, obedient housewife. She was gone. I'd buried her back in Virginia with all the lies that used to define me. Sometimes I caught myself wondering about Marianne and the baby. Did she stay in town? Did she leave? Did that child ever hear about Michael and Teresa, their half-siblings out here building a life from the ruins? I'd probably never know, but I didn't hold hate anymore, just distance. By 71, things finally started to look up. Teresa was a little bookworm, always with her nose buried in a library book. Michael had a brain built for numbers, already talking about becoming an engineer. My sewing was taking off too. I was making party dresses, even seeing my name mentioned in little local newspaper columns. I wasn't rich. I wasn't fancy. But for the first time in forever, I was free. I was building something real, something mine. And just when I thought I'd finally caught my breath, life threw me another curveball. You might want to buckle up for this next one, because the twist that's coming, it's the kind that changes everything, again. You ever think the past is done with you? And then one rainy afternoon it shows up at your door? Yeah, that was the day mine came knocking. It was a gray Wednesday in October 1971. I just turned 31, finally starting to feel like all those sleepless nights and hard-earned calluses were paying off. My little sewing studio, tucked right into the living room, was buzzing with clients. Nothing fancy, but I had regulars who trusted me, who paid fair and who left smiling. That alone felt like freedom. Outside, the rain came down in sheets. I was finishing up a graduation dress, navy satin, delicate beading, when a knock echoed through the apartment. Michael ran to the door, his shoes squeaking on the floor. "Mom," he called, voice small, uncertain. "There's a lady here with a baby." I wiped my hands on my apron and turned toward the door. And there she was, Marianne, standing there drenched, shivering, clutching a sleeping baby against her chest. For a second, everything just froze. The same woman who had helped blow my world apart, standing on my doorstep, asking for something. Her hair was limp, her face pale, eyes rimmed dark, nothing like the photographs I'd seen back then, but the determination in those eyes, still there. I didn't know where else to go," she whispered. And right then a storm brewed inside me. Rage, betrayal, heartbreak, every emotion I thought I'd buried tried to claw its way back up. But then I looked at that baby. Soft cheeks, long lashes, completely innocent. A child who didn't ask for any of this mess. "Come in," I said quietly. "You're soaked." Michael stepped aside, and I gave him and Teresa little tasks, towels, hot water, tea, anything to break the tension hanging thick in the air. Marianne sat stiff on the edge of the sofa, clutching her son like she might fall apart without him. "Boy?" I asked. She nodded. "His name's Charles." "He's 10 months. We sipped tea in silence till her hands stopped trembling. Then, just like a dam bursting, she started talking. She'd lost everything, the house, the job, her family. Her parents had thrown her out when the baby came. She'd been surviving on scraps in motel rooms, and then just last week she got a letter from Anthony. Cold, detached, typical. "Circumstances have changed," it said. "It's better we go separate ways." That was it, not even a damn apology. She slid the letter across the table. I didn't need to read it. I could have written those words myself years ago. "I have nowhere to go," she said finally, tears running down her cheeks. I looked at her and at the baby. He had Michael's chin, Teresa's soft eyes, and something inside me shifted. Maybe compassion, maybe exhaustion. I just knew I couldn't turn them away. "You know anything about sewing?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, but I learned fast. I used to teach grade school." I took a breath. "There's a small room in the back. It's not much, but it's warm, comes with meals. And if you're up for it, I could use help managing clients and books." Her eyes widened like she couldn't believe it. "You'd take me in? After everything?" "I'm not doing it for you," I said, steady. "I'm doing it for him. He's your son, but he's also my children's brother. And maybe I'm doing it for me too. I'm tired of holding on to hate." That night, I told Michael and Teresa the truth. "The baby who came today," I said softly, "is your brother, your father's son from another woman. She and the baby need help, and we're going to help them." Michael, wise beyond his 10 years, frowned. "She's the one Dad left us for, isn't she?" "Yes," I admitted, but she was lied to, just like we were." Teresa, all innocence and heart, just said, "Can I play with him when he grows up?" "Of course, sweetheart. He's family." Those next few weeks were awkward, the kind of silence that sticks to your skin. Marianne couldn't look me in the eye at first. The neighbors talked. Oh, did they talk? The wife and the mistress under one roof. It was a scandal waiting to happen. But little by little, things began to settle. Turns out Marianne had a real knack for organization. Within days, she'd reworked my entire client system. Neat books, proper appointments, no more chaos. With her managing the business side, I finally had time to focus on design. And the kids? They adapted faster than the adults. Teresa became the big sister she always wanted to be, doting over Charles. Michael was quieter but protective, always stepping in when Marianne was too tired. Some nights, after the kids were asleep, Marianne and I would sit at the kitchen table, two women bound by betrayal, slowly learning what forgiveness feels like. Some nights after the kids were asleep, Marianne and I would sit at the kitchen table, two women bound by betrayal, slowly learning what forgiveness feels like. She'd ask questions about how I'd found out. I told her about the Bible, the note, the evidence. She pieced it together and realized I'd been the one who sent the proof that brought everything crashing down. But instead of anger, she just nodded. "I'd have done the same," she said softly. And over time, we became something strange and beautiful. Not quite friends, not enemies either. Just two women rebuilding a life from the same wreckage. By late 1972, the studio was thriving. We moved to a bigger apartment with an actual workspace. The kids had their rooms. The house was full of laughter, fabric, and coffee, a mix of chaos and peace I'd never known before. Then one afternoon, the intercom buzzed. "Mrs. Miller, there's a man here to see you. Says his name's Edward." That name hit like a ghost. Edward, Anthony's partner, the one who'd written that note. When he stepped into my studio, I barely recognized him. Gone was the polished banker. In his place stood a broken man, pale, hollow, weighed down by guilt. "I just got out," he said quietly. 3 years for fraud. Good behavior. He told me the note was Anthony's idea, said Anthony wanted to scare me off, keep his secrets safe. Edward looked me in the eyes and said, "I can't live with it anymore." I needed to tell you he wasn't looking for forgiveness, just a sliver of peace. Before he left, he said something that stuck with me. "Your courage saved more people than you'll ever know. You stopped something big, and you probably saved lives." After he walked out, I stood by the window watching the rain blur the city lights, and for the first time, the past didn't feel heavy anymore. It just was. When Marianne came home with the kids, I didn't mention the visit. Some ghosts, you just let go quietly. Stick around, because what happens next? It's the chapter where life finally stops testing me and starts rewarding me, or at least that's what I thought. Funny thing about life, just when you think the storm's done wrecking your world, the sun shows up like, "All right, kid, let's see what you're made of now." That was 1973. Michael was 12, already top of his class, the kind of kid teachers bragged about, sharp with numbers, always tinkering with something. Teresa, 10 and full of dreams, had a sketchbook glued to her hands. Her drawings started sneaking their way into my designs, and little Charles, sweet, curious Charles, was almost 3, running around calling me Aunt Gertie and calling Marianne Mommy. The kid had no clue about the tangled web that tied us all together, and maybe that was for the best. Then one day, opportunity came knocking, this time with good intentions. One of my best clients, a real high society lady who owned a fine fabric store downtown, offered me a partnership. "You've got the talent, I've got the capital," she said with a smile that meant business. "Let's open a boutique. Something elegant, something with your name on it." It sounded like a dream, and a nightmare rolled into one. I had spent years keeping life simple, predictable, safe. This was the big leagues. Rent, employees, bills, reputation, it was a lot. "I'll need to talk to my partner," I told her, using the word we always used for Marianne when we didn't want to explain, well, everything. That night, once the kids were asleep and the world went quiet, I laid it all out on the kitchen table. Marianne listened, her brow furrowed, tapping her pencil on a scrap of paper. "It's risky," she said, always the realist. "But Gertie, this could change everything." We could finally breathe, maybe even buy a house someday. We sat there for hours, dreaming, arguing, calculating, laughing. Somewhere between the numbers and the coffee, we decided to jump. I pitched the name Confections by Gertrude. Marianne wrinkled her nose. "How about something fresher? Atelier Nouveau or something like that?" We cracked up, realizing we were starting to sound like businesswomen who actually knew what they were doing. The next morning, I told my client, "We're in." And just like that, life sped up. We got the keys to a small space on Madison Avenue. Old, dusty, but full of potential. In 3 wild months, We turned it into something magical. Marianne had an eye for design. With secondhand furniture, a few yards of lace, and sheer willpower, she made that place shine. We hired 2 seamstresses. I focused on custom gowns, and together we launched our boutique. The grand opening? Oh, honey, it wasn't some champagne-soaked gala. It was homemade appetizers, borrowed glasses, and the kind of pride that money can't buy. Michael, all serious and grown up, greeted guests at the door like a little gentleman. Teresa handed out scented sachets we'd made ourselves. And Charles, that boy had a smile that could melt marble, stole every heart in the room. I looked around and felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. Gratitude. Like I'd finally exhaled after holding my breath for too long. 4 years before, I'd found a note that should have ended me. A threat written in my husband's Bible, the kind of thing that shakes your faith in everything you thought was safe. But that same note, the one meant to destroy me, ended up setting me free. The woman who once broke my heart was now my right hand. The scandal that should have ruined me, rebuilt me, and the pain that once hollowed me out became the soil where I started to grow again. We called the place Atelier Gertrude, part me, part Marianne. By 1975, that little boutique wasn't so little anymore. We'd moved to Park Avenue. Yeah, that Park Avenue. Our dresses hanging in big bright windows for everyone to see, and the moment I saw one of my gowns in a women's magazine with the caption Elegance by Gertrude, I had to sit down before I cried my eyeliner off. Me, the ex-banker's wife, the one who was supposed to disappear in shame, was now on glossy paper, doing what I loved. Marianne turned out to be a damn genius. She ran the numbers, managed the books, dreamed bigger than I dared. It was her idea to launch Young Gertrude, a ready-to-wear line inspired by Teresa's sketches, more affordable but still classy. Our boutique became a place where people didn't just shop, they trusted us. And though some still whispered behind our backs, the wife and the mistress working together, can you believe that? Most people just saw 2 women who'd built something from scratch. By the mid-70s, life felt steady, the kind of steady I hadn't known in a decade. Michael was deep into science projects, Teresa was turning into a little artist, and Charles, well, he was the light that kept our home laughing. We'd moved into a big house in Georgetown, and the kind with a garden and a studio in the back where I'd sew while the kids played. 2 housekeepers, steady business, peace at last. Yeah, peace. Until that afternoon in June 1976, when the past decided it wasn't quite finished with me yet. Don't go anywhere, because next up, that knock on the door. It's not opportunity this time. It's a ghost from the life I thought I'd buried. I was pinning the last seam on a graduation dress when my receptionist whispered, "Mrs. Miller, there's a man here asking for you. Says his name's Anthony Miller." My hand froze. The pin slipped, pricking my finger. Anthony. 7 years gone. 7 years to prepare for this moment. And still, my chest clenched like it was 1969 again. "Tell him to wait," I said automatically. Then I caught my own reflection in the mirror, the woman I'd become. Not the frightened wife he left behind, but a woman who built a business, a home, and a new life from ashes. "Actually, tell him I'll be right there." Anthony was sitting stiff in our reception, out of place among bolts of silk and humming sewing machines. Prison had carved the arrogance right out of him. His hair was white, his face thinner, his eyes dimmer. "Gertrude," he said softly. "Anthony," I replied, calm and cool. "Let's talk in my office." Inside, he glanced around at Teresa's drawings on the wall and the photos of our kids. "You've built something incredible," he murmured. "What do you want?" I asked, taking my seat behind the desk, my desk. "To see my children," he said. "Michael and Teresa and Charles." The last name stung. "You gave up that right when you walked away," I told him. "I know," he said, voice shaking. "I've had a lot of time to think." To regret for a long moment, I just looked at him, the man who once controlled every breath I took, Now he was just a man, a tired one. I can't decide for Marianne, I said at last. And as for Michael and Teresa, they're old enough to choose for themselves. He nodded. Fair enough. I needed to know if you're happy. I'm happy despite you, I answered simply. And for the first time, I knew it was true. That night, I gathered everyone in the living room. Your father's out, I said. He wants to see you. Michael crossed his arms. I've got nothing to say to him. Teresa's eyes glistened. Maybe I do, she whispered. Marianne said nothing, just twisted her ring, old memories stirring. He asked about Charles, too, I added gently. She exhaled. If he really means it, he can see him, but on my terms. In the weeks that followed, Teresa met him first, a quiet lunch, 2 hours of tears and closure. He said he always knew I'd be an artist, she told me later. And you know what? I'm not angry anymore. Just sad Michael stayed away, burying himself in his studies, already talking about MIT. As for Marianne and Charles, their meeting was short, awkward, but peaceful. She told me later he tried to offer money. I told him we don't need his charity. After that, Anthony became a ghost at the edges of our lives. Sunday lunches with Teresa, occasional zoo trips with Charles, respectful distance with me. Life went on. The boutique thrived. We even opened a second store. By 1978, I was showing my designs in early New York fashion shows. Michael got into MIT. Teresa joined art school. Charles started talking like a little businessman, and Anthony, he worked quietly as an accountant, living small, living clean. At family milestones, we'd nod across the room, two people bound by the past but freed by what came after. It was 1980, 11 years since I found that note that changed everything. I was in the studio finishing the hem of a wedding dress when my assistant peeked in. Mrs. Miller, there's a couple here asking for you. He says his name's Edward, the man who'd written that note. I stepped into the reception, and there he was, older, humbler, holding hands with a woman about his age. Mrs. Miller, he said softly, this is Helena, my fiancée. We're getting married next month. She wanted you to make her dress. I blinked, a half-smile forming. You told her about us? He did, Helena said, her voice gentle but firm. He told me everything. And still. I wanted you. For a moment, I just looked at them. This man who once nearly destroyed my life, now asking for help to celebrate love. Years ago, I'd have thrown him out. But now, I'd learned that life gives second chances to those brave enough to face their past. Come on, Helena, I said. Let's talk lace and dreams. Time rolled on. Michael became an engineer, built his own company. Teresa took over design at the boutique, adding her spark to my old world craft. Charles grew into a bright young businessman, running the numbers like he was born for it. Marianne and I never parted, not as partners, not as family, two women who turned betrayal into a bond stronger than blood. Anthony passed in 95. We all went to the funeral, caused not for love lost, but for the life that tied us together. Now I'm 78, gray-haired and grateful. The boutique's a national name, run by Teresa and Charles. I spend my mornings in the garden, my afternoons with grandkids, and my evenings beside Marianne, two old souls who made peace with every scar. Sometimes I think back to that terrified woman in 1969, holding that note with shaking hands. I wish I could whisper to her, "Courage, Gertrude. The storm won't break you. It'll build you." So if you're listening, my dear ones, remember this. Sometimes the worst moment of your life is just the universe clearing space for something better.